Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we are going to talk about one of the most interesting orchids there is in the hobby, the beautiful leafless Chiloschista orchid, which is not it. This is a flower spike I broke and I keep it in water. I don't want to show you this orchid from the beginning because sadly it happens to be mounted on one of the most horrifying, sinister mounts I have ever seen. I know from previous comments that there are a few of you which have trypophobia, I think this is how you call it, and well, this orchid is mounted on that really horrible looking plastic mount that has a lot of holes. It looks like an unclean drain to me. It really bothers me, so I can imagine you will be unsettled by it. So here is a timestamp. You can skip to this part of the video if you don't want to see that mount. I will be talking about it. I will unmount the orchid from it. I did receive requests on this type of subject, but if you want to skip that part, you can skip to that timestamp and you're not going to see it. So that being said, don't forget to give this video a like if you end up enjoying it and find it useful. Leave me a comment, a share would be great, and why not subscribe? I post 3 times a week. And with that said, for those of you that want to skip, it is time to skip in 3, 2, 1. And this is it. I personally don't have trypophobia. I don't get very disturbed by this, but I hate looking at it. As I was saying, it reminds me of an unclean drain for whatever reason. And to be fully honest, I don't see how practical this is for growers anyway. It is practical probably for people who sell orchids. Now, I can see the argument that this is reusable, it is plastic, so it's not gonna degrade, but a clay mount is also not going to degrade. The problem is clay mounts, and Maya's on the tripod, she's filming me today. So clay mounts, as you can see, if you drop them, they can break. And also they're kind of heavy. I don't know if they're cheaper than this, probably not. So I can see how in a mass production facility, this, even if it looks horrifying, you know, it justifies its use in a mass production nursery. Doesn't mean I have to look at it. So I'm saying I absolutely hate it. So what I want to do is transfer this orchid from this mount to a wooden mount that I salvaged from another orchid, but it looks much better. I think it's going to be a little bit of a hassle because you can see there are a lot of roots growing through these holes. So I will probably have to cut the mount. One of you guys asked me to make a video about it. Well, here you go. What a coincidence. I honestly surely hope these mounts don't become more popular, but I fear they will be. And if you're wondering what are we gonna do with the flower spikes, because yeah, this orchid has flower spikes, well, we're just gonna take a risk, because leaving aside the fact that I hate looking at this, I also want to showcase this orchid. If it blooms, I want to take photos, put them on Instagram, make videos about it, and I don't want this mount associated with any of my platforms other than removal of it. It's not me, I don't like it. I am willing to take the risk of losing the flowers, but generally speaking, if your orchid is spiking and you want to see the blooms, maybe delay unmounting it, even repotting it. So yeah, there is a chance the orchid will abort the flower spikes. I'm just willing to take that chance. So without further ado, let's get to work. First and foremost, I want to soak this orchid thoroughly to make the roots a little bit more flexible. Alright, so the orchid is all soaked up. First of all, let's remove this hook. It is in the way. And now comes the quote-unquote fun part. I think I will need to cut portions of this. I will use my all-purpose pruners, which looks horrible, but this is because it is used for dirty jobs like these. Flame it a little bit first. And first of all, I do see there is a wire keeping this orchid in place. I'm going to remove the wire first. Pretty easy, right? You can, whoops, that flew. You can see why I like this pruners. It can be a pliers, a wire cutter, a plastic cutter, it can be anything. First and foremost, let's try not to cut this because, you know, not a fan of it. Let's see if I can actually remove this orchid. Maybe it's not attached. So I think I'm gonna go like right under the roots and just pull up. Oh, I think we can do this. Let's see. and see where there is resistance. Where there's resistance, I'm gonna go and gently detach the root or remove it from the hole. And you know what? This is not all that hard. We might be able to just remove the orchid like so. It will be okay if a few roots break. This orchid has a lot of roots, but as you would expect, roots are super important on this orchid since it does not have leaves. If we lose most of the roots, we're in trouble because the orchid uses the roots to photosynthesize, not the leaves. We're gonna talk more about this orchid after we're done with the mount so that more people will join in if they've skipped this part. So one by one, let's just pull these roots through the holes. Easy peasy, huh? Thank goodness. Please, can I talk? Oh, they're both of them. Okay, so on this hole we have 3 roots. I'm pretty sure that one of them will not make it. Oh, would you look at that? We saved all of them. And yeah, we only lost 1 root, which wasn't really all that healthy anyway. Very happy with that. Now let's go ahead and cut away all of these dead roots. So we have some cocoa fiber here, which I'm gonna cut away. I'm not gonna use this. For detailed work, I absolutely love my Fiskars. This is a little too chunky, but yeah, I'm going to cut away this fiber very carefully and remove it. Then again, very carefully remove all of these dried roots. Now in this particular case, I was quite lucky because the orchid wasn't very attached to this mount, and also I didn't have roots just going in and out of the holes and practically weaving themselves in this mount. But this can absolutely happen the more an orchid spends time on this mount. So what I would have done to save roots would be to cut the mount. And I do want to try it out just to let you guys know how hard it is to cut. I usually use the same tool to cut away Vanda baskets and it works great. But first and foremost, what you need are protection goggles. Plastic bits will fly everywhere, including your eyes. So please, please be careful if you ever want to cut plastics or anything. Buy yourself one of these. Always use it whenever you're dealing with something that possibly sends out shards in the air. You never know, things can happen. Please be careful. So I'm gonna put on my goggles, and what I would do is try to go on one of the edges and cut. Oh, this is bad. Oh no. Oh no. This is horrible. Do you see how thick this plastic is in comparison to a Vanda basket? I have a Vanda basket. Or parts of it. Yeah, there you go. I recently cut a Vanda basket. This is nothing. Look at this. Easy, right? You cannot do the same with this guy. You will probably need a metal cutting tool, really, because this is thick. I dislike this thing with a passion. I feel like it makes sense for nurseries, as I was saying, maybe it cuts costs, but one, it's plastic, eventually it will get thrown away. You know, why not do something made out of clay? Just make it thinner so it's not so heavy. And also, you just know most home growers will not use these things, and it's gonna be so bad to remove orchids from them. So I hope these will not become very popular, because they're pretty horrifying in my opinion. I'm sure there will be people out there who will appreciate them and will like them. I feel like the majority of people will not. They will want to pot the orchids, but I don't know. Verdict is, I was lucky. If this was a lot more attached, I would have broken a lot of the roots, and with Chiloschistas, not a good idea. So that is my opinion on these things. So let's get rid of them and welcome the people who skipped this part of the video. Now let's talk a little bit about the orchid, which is what we're interested in. Alrighty, let's focus on the orchid now that we're done with that horrible mount. I didn't tell you what variety I have. This is Chiloschista viridiflava. It should have light colored blooms, I think yellowish. Whenever you see the flava word, that means it's a lighter colored flower. And of course, as you can see, I do have 4 or 5 flower spikes. Now, this orchid is not sick. It did not lose its leaves. It is naturally leafless. Now, it can actually create very tiny leaves at some points in its life. If you'd search for this orchid on the internet, you would see a few pictures with tiny little leaves, but generally speaking, it is a leafless orchid. It relies on its roots to photosynthesize, and it produces flower spikes just like any other orchid, and the flowers are just beautiful. Now, I think you can see what the problem is when you try to grow this orchid in a home. You have to keep it in a way where roots are exposed to sunlight, which means pots are not going to be an option. If you put medium around the roots, obviously you will restrict light. For most orchids, this is absolutely fine because they do rely on their leaves to photosynthesize and produce food. And generally speaking, most orchids really don't mind being potted in opaque pots. You will not actually see a difference in performance if the roots do not get light. With this orchid, that is not the case. So if you cannot pot it in a living room, how will you grow it? Well, conventionally, you would grow it mounted, hopefully on a piece of wood and not a horrible looking plastic full of holes. But that means that you will have to water it every day or every 2 days pretty often in comparison to a potted orchid. And many of us don't have time. It is a commitment most of us are not necessarily willing to take. Hence why I put off acquiring one of these orchids. But I always wondered, how can I keep them without having to worry about watering them every single day? Well, I might actually have a solution. I'm going to mount this orchid and keep it in a glass cloche. Now, obviously, if you do have time, I'm going to show you a few displays which look very cute that don't require a glass dome of any kind. So stay tuned, we're gonna try a few things and you just have to see which one you think will benefit you most, will suit you most, whichever one you like most. But for now, I am going to mount this orchid on this piece of wood, which I got from another orchid. I cleaned it up. And P.S. the way to sanitize a wooden mount that belonged to another orchid is not with bleach necessarily. Wood is very porous, it will absorb substances, and bleach is pretty harmful for roots in high quantities. What I like to use after I scrub it a little bit with water, maybe a little bit of dish detergent, that's super mild and super safe. What I like to do is spray it with hydrogen peroxide, 3%, 6%, 9%. Does not matter. It's hydrogen peroxide. It will clean, or rather sanitize the mount, killing off bacteria, algae spores. So the substance you find in human pharmacies for external use for your skin, you can spray it on the wood, let it fizz for half an hour, let it do its job, and you can safely reuse it with another orchid. It will not be harmful for the other orchid because after the initial reaction, all you will have here is air and water. That's all that's left after hydrogen peroxide. Nothing will be embedded in the structure of the wood, so you can absolutely use it. Alrighty, so there are a few ways to go about this. First of all, you can absolutely put a little bit of sphagnum moss on the mount and then put the orchid on top so that it retains a little bit more water. I have issues with algae, I'm not gonna do that. I'm going to be keeping this orchid in high humidity anyway. I don't need it. So let's prepare the mount. This is a wire that I salvaged from another mount and I really like it. It's very flexible. I don't know what material this is. It looks like the stuff you solder with. I don't know how you call it in English. Maybe it's not that, but that's what it reminds me of. And I love it because it's so flexible. Oh, this one has a choppy end. There we go. So I'm gonna use this as my little hook. The reason why I want it so short, you will see, is because I have kind of long hooks. You're gonna understand when I show you the cloche, but it looks like a little ring. So I am going to be stabilizing the orchid on this mount using the pre-drilled holes. Not all mounts have this, mine does. I will be using it. If you don't have pre-drilled holes, you can just tie your orchid with some fishing line, jute twine, raffia tape, even floral wire, whatever you want. I'm gonna be using this floral wire knot at this point. I don't know how it got like this, but it did. Cut a length. See, this is so good at cutting wire. And I'm going to be using the same route the other wire that was on here had. Let's see if I find it. I do, I see it. In between the roots, there we go. Because in this way I can hide this wire. And then feed it through these holes and pull it out on the other side, making sure that my orchid is nicely arranged. There we are. So practically I only caught a few of the roots. It's all I need. As this orchid grows, the roots will attach themselves. These roots will never attach, but it's okay, they can dangle. I'm fine with it. I just want a few roots to be attached. And at the end here, all I need to do is just twist the wire. Don't bite me. Twist it and bend it to one side so that we don't get scratched. And hey presto, my orchid is all mounted. Now at this point, again, it is personal preference. If you want to add a little bit of moss here in the middle of the roots, a little bit of cocoa fiber, whatever you find interesting, you absolutely can. The important thing is not to overly shade these roots. The more exposed roots you have, the better. Alrighty, so for today, I think this will be enough. I actually filmed a lot more, but it turned out to be a super long video, upwards of 30 minutes. And it just doesn't make sense because there are too many topics in one video. So today I'm gonna leave it at this, unmounting this orchid and mounting it back on a wood mount. And next time I'm gonna show you the cloche setup that I have together with other ideas of practically displaying or keeping this orchid in a home. What I'm gonna do about the flower spikes, because yeah, they will grow pretty long, and yeah, focus more on displaying and growing this orchid easily in a home. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I know there is somebody who really was looking forward to me talking more about that horrible mount. I'm sorry I don't have better news for you. I don't know how to cut that mount. I think I need a metal cutter, one of those heavy-duty stuff. The problem with those is that they're not fine enough and there's a real chance you will damage the orchid. So let's collectively hope that those mounts are not gonna gain popularity. But with that said, thank you so much for joining. I hope you found this interesting and I hope you have a great day. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And I'll see you all next time when we're gonna talk more about the leafless orchid. Bye!